Kenya needs to go back to the drawing board, look at Vision 2030, which is obviously off track, and come back with a compelling vision. Mr. Speaker, I usually say that the Mwai Kibaki government left us with some things that we could learn from. We had a National Economic and Social Council. It was very highly powered. We even had people who had run economies in Singapore. We had people who had run successful economies outside Africa. Why can't we bring back a National Economic and Social Council anchored in law and given the necessary independence, the necessary facilitation to be able to think through the challenges that this country is facing and come up with a compelling vision that is aligned to the 2030 goals and aligned to the 2063 Africa Union goals. Mwai Kibaki had a dedicated ministry for national planning. Today, we've got a ministry for national, CS in charge of the national treasury and economic planning. And Mr. Speaker, from my observation, since this position was created, most of the cabinet secretaries have focused on the issues of the treasury, the issues of disbursements, the issues of fiscal policy, the issues of ensuring that there is money moving from taxpayers to relevant sectors of the economy. There's been very little attention to economic planning. Mr. Speaker, economic planning and running the national treasury sometimes requires two sets of skills and expertise. And perhaps it is time that the president, even when he's thinking about reorganization of his cabinet, he needs to give thought to an independent national economic planning department or ministry that is distinct from that of the national treasury, that looks after the granary and makes sure that whatever goes in is accounted for and whatever goes out is traceable. Mr. Speaker, another subject that was discussed at this forum was to end hunger and to achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Mr. Speaker, 3 weeks ago, the CS for Agriculture was in this house, and we put a question to him on what the country's current agricultural policy is, and he confessed that he's still working on it. How can a country where 33% of the GDP comes from the agricultural sector, leave alone the other linkages that contribute to employment across the entire economy, operate without a clear agricultural policy? The Agriculture and Food Authority, Mr. Speaker, has for almost 8 years been running without a proper board, been running without a director general. This was only formalized last year. The regulations, sector-specific regulations, have not been brought to this House. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that this House processed the amendments to the Statutory Instruments Act that provides timelines and provides stiff penalties to cabinet secretaries or regulatory making entities that delay in making regulations. Agriculture is too important to be left on autopilot. The agricultural policy in this country, Mr. Speaker, save for a few sectors like tea, which has largely been run fairly well because the government has not been allowed to interfere too much. The rest of the sector is driven by God. We are on the mercy of God. We will be talking of an improved productivity, of improved production, but Mr. Speaker, it is about rain. Not too long ago, I saw some top leaders going to church and thanking God for answering their prayers and claiming that we are responsible for the rains that fell on the nation and increased food production. We cannot run a country in this kind of contemporary economy, a global setup, by going through those kind of superstitious and backward beliefs that they are the ones who prayed for rain. It is as if prayer for rain is a preserve of just a few people. Mr. Speaker, successful economies have invested in things that go beyond the act of God. They invest in improved seed. They invest in fertilizer. There is no reason why this country, Mr. Speaker, continues to import and import fertilizer blended when we could, not too long ago, Toyota was supposed to set up a plant in Uasin Gishu for blending fertilizer. Let's ask ourselves, what is so special about fertilizer that stops us from getting phosphates from Morocco or getting raw materials from other parts of the country and other parts of the globe and blending it so that we have something that is fit for climatic conditions? We had a week ago, Mr. Speaker, that even donations that are given to us in good faith, we end up blending, repackaging, and selling at a profit. And then we say that that is our agricultural policy. As long as we are approaching agriculture from a perspective of tokenism and a perspective of prayer, then, Mr. Speaker, agriculture will continue to run on autopilot. And those sectors that perhaps are growing are the sectors where the public or where the government has no hands. The horticulture producers, you've got the large-scale producers in places like Narok, in places
Senator John Kinyo, what is your point of order?
I just want my good friend, Senator Kajwang, to clarify whether he believes in prayers, because he's doubting everything. He's saying we can't leave our. So I'm wondering why doesn't he believe in any prayers? No, I just want clarity. There's no standing. It's just clarity, because I know he's a good Christian and he's a good friend of mine.
Mr. Speaker, I am a Christian and I'm a believer, but there's an intersection between faith and science, and that the church acknowledges. The Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Islamic faith, all the faiths believe in that intersection between science and faith. And so, Mr. Speaker, I will not accept a situation where the leadership wants to tell us that they're the ones responsible for the rains through their prayer. Rain is an act of God. It is the benevolence of God that we get rain, and it is not because of human action. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I know there are so many things that were captured here. In the morning, I listened to my colleague, Senator Mungatana, talk about the need for a model climate change law, because part of the issues that were discussed at this high-level forum was urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And I'm glad to report, Mr. Speaker, that through the Africa Parliamentarian Network on Climate Change, where I sit in the bureau, we have come up with a model climate change law, which we have circulated to all the parliaments across Africa. Kenya was a leader. Kenya came up with the first Climate Change Act in 2016. But from 2016 to date, a lot of things have changed. Things like carbon trading and carbon markets have become mainstream. The Paris Agreement has received further interpretation and further enhancements. We have new concepts like the new collective quantified goal on climate financing. We have new concerns like reforming the climate financing architecture. And so, Mr. Speaker, I will soon be presenting to the House and to the relevant committee the proposed climate change law so that we can compare it with Kenya's climate change law and see areas where we can enhance. One of the things that we have proposed in the model climate change law is climate budget tagging. In Uganda, Mr. Speaker, when Parliament processes the budget, they have to produce at least two certificates. One certificate is that the budget is gender responsive, and the second certificate is that the budget is climate responsive. I would be happy if Kenya adopted that practice, that every budget must be looked at to ensure that issues of climate are mainstreamed and issues of gender are mainstreamed alongside the other considerations that are in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, even as we go to the next Africa Climate Summit, the first one having been organized and hosted in Kenya, the next one would probably be hosted in Addis Ababa at the Africa Union headquarters. We need to go there with clarity on what we want to achieve. The biggest elephant in the room is that the people who have made riches out of activities that have polluted and aggravated the climate crisis are unwilling to part with money, a little share of the black proceeds that they've gotten, so that other countries can adapt and other countries can mitigate. And that is why when we went to Baku in Azerbaijan for the last conference of parties, whereas African countries and developing countries had insisted that to deal with the climate crisis, we needed 1.3 trillion US dollars. The rich nations that have grown rich on the back of polluting and very hazardous activities were unwilling to yield. And out of the 1.3 trillion, it is only 300 trillion that was put on the table. And Mr. Speaker, that 300 trillion, so far there are no clear regulations and guidelines on how it will be utilized. And I hope that that will be the focus of all climate change activists as they proceed to Brazil for the next conference of party, to ensure that there are resources or means of implementation to allow developing countries like those in Africa and even those that are not developing like Kenya, which is a low middle income economy, to be able to adapt, to be able to mitigate. Kenya has done very well when it comes to energy. If you look at our energy mix, it's largely renewable, but what we are producing is not enough. Mr. Speaker, I support this report. I support this motion, and I want to encourage that we ensure that we have adequate resources to allow these members to attend this high-level forum, because it helps to sharpen them and it helps to bring them up to date on contemporary global issues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Kajwang. And Senator Kajwang, as much as I agree with you that rain is the act of God, but even in the Bible and in the Islamic faith, we have seen several stories whereby prophets have prayed for rain. In the Bible, I'm sure there's the story of Elijah, who predicted a drought and then went ahead and prayed to God for rain so that to end the drought. So let us preach the right today. Senator